I'm always quick to extend forgiveness. If I know somebody, I'm going to get this person by the hand. We going somewhere so we can talk, so we can deal with whatever. But what I think about is, I know where I came from too, and I know God had to forgive a whole bunch of mess. And He, when I asked for it, He didn't validate it. He didn't evaluate it to see whether or not. He didn't even think about it. No validation to see if He was going to release me of that. He just extended it. So when that comes to me, I'm quick to forgive, because I just think in the back of my mind, if I go to God and He just like folding His arms trying to determine whether or not He gonna forgive me, how can you stand?
That's something I had to deal with, because every time I would mess up, I would think that God is sitting there just angry and mad, and He's not gonna let it go, and I might get struck down tomorrow for what I did. But we always forget. Right? Exactly. But that's not the kind of God that's there for us. That's not how our Father's going to do us. It's not how our Daddy brought us up. He wants us to know that He is there coaching us on and just saying, I know you fell, I know you stumbled, but just get back up and keep on going. I don't want you to stay there in that dirt. So I think that's something a misconception that a lot of Christians face, and we just got to understand that, just as God can forgive us for anything, we should be able to forgive people for anything.
And don't evaluate it, just do it.
All right, now we're going to go back to break again. But you guys stay tuned in and work your forgiveness. We'll be right back. I'm your host, Jamisha Salette, and I have my co-host with me. Come on, ladies.
Cantrella Kennedy.
And Angela Bryant. Hello.
All right, now. We left off talking about forgiveness, and again, this show is being pre-recorded. We would love to have been here to be able to hear you guys' feedback and share. Matter of fact, next week we want you guys to call us at 239-332-1350 and let us know. Give us some of your testimonies of forgiveness, whether you've had to forgive someone or you had to ask forgiveness, and let us know how it played out for you and how God worked things out. But we left off talking about the gateway, forgiveness being a gateway to healing and your inheritance, how it's hard for you to heal when you're constantly harboring unforgiveness and you're not able to move forward. You're hindering your blessings. You're hindering your inheritance. And so we just want you to know how important it is for you just to let things go. That it may hurt. Yes, we understand. We all been through it. But you have to let it go in order for you to heal and in order for you to gain what God has for you. Right. Also, we were talking about the unforgiveness. When you let it go, you're setting yourself free. A lot of times, we are concerned about the other person when they've gone on, moved on, happy, laughing, on vacation, having a good time, and you're sitting at home, having a pity party, frustrated, crying, mad, and another key thing is, do they even know?
Right.
And then you're really mad because you think, how they go on vacation? They leave me, and I'm all upset, and I'm so mad, and she got some nerve, or he got some nerve. And sometimes they may be out enjoying themselves, wishing you were there because they don't know you at home, mad at them.
Right.
And even for the cases for the ones that know that what they did to you and know that they're wrong, and whether they apologize or not, we must always have the heart of God. And sometimes we have to be the bigger person when we know that we haven't done anything wrong and go back and apologize, because we're supposed to be God's representative here on the earth. So one of the things that I wrote down I thought was good was, the greatest people in the world are those that overcome what others have done to them. And that is strong.
That is very strong.
That is strong. That is strong. I mean, because I could just close my eyes right now and be like, yeah,
Wow.
But at the same time, I mean, I had, and this is something I'm going to share, when I was a little girl, I don't want to get emotional because it reminds me of this poem that I wrote. I'm going to read it for you guys one day. My dad had this girlfriend, and I didn't like her too much because she was very mean. She was lazy. She would sit home all day, and she would just lay there and watch TV. I remember Dark Shadows and all the stories. She had like all her stories lined up. They come all the soap operas. We call them the stories. Come on, and she would watch them, and I would come home from school, and the kitchen would be nasty, and she would make me go wash all the dishes. She sat at home all day, and I had to go in, clean up my dad's room where they sleep. Clean up my dad's room, and then she was so jealous of my relationship with my father that my dad used to have me walk down the street act like he wasn't going anywhere, and then, and then say, oh, well, let me go so-and-so place. And he would come down the street and pick me up from the store. So she would think that I was out with my friends, but I would literally be going with my dad. But she was so jealous.
Wow.
This woman, when I was little, I was 7 years old, second grade. I remember she used to touch on me and want me to touch on her and do stuff. And I used to just sit and just cry and just cry and just cry. And I remember my uncle had a girlfriend, and she was on the streets. He had on his girlfriend, but he had on the streets. And this lady actually was on the street as well, selling her body. And I remember sometimes at night I would hear her bring different guys home. And, she would, like, open the door. Sometimes I would act like I was asleep, but I wouldn't be. And, like, my eyes would be, like, just a little open. And I'll see guys, white, black, Spanish, whatever. And she'll say, oh, well, that's my daughter, whatever. I don't know if it was to say whatever, like, I don't know, the I'm sorry spirit. So they would give her more money, or whatever. And I don't know where my dad would be. But in that, I remember my mom and my father got back together. And when they got back together, she was devastated, because I know me, I'd have been thinking, I'm doing all this for you, I'm out selling my body, doing whatever, and then this woman comes back and you just, kick me out like nothing. Mm-hmm. And I remember my uncle went to California, and she went along with him. And with his girlfriend, she decided, well, I can't be with you, so I'm going to California, just, go. It's like I have no kids, no nothing, so let me just up and just go. So she left, and she was gone for maybe 6 months. And we got a call saying that they found her body floating in the water in California, and the fish had bitten all off on it. And I remember just sitting there at 12, well, about 13 then, sitting there, and I remember just crying and crying and crying for her and crying for her mom. I liked her mom, loved her sisters. They didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on. I was too scared to tell my daddy. But I remember sitting there. I went to her funeral. My dad didn't go. Me and my mom went, ironically. And I remember sitting there, and they had this little box sitting up on this table where they didn't have money to send her body, so they cremated her. They didn't even open the box. So there's this box sitting on this mantle with postage on it and everything, and I guess the urn sitting on the inside. And I just remember as a little girl sitting in the back of the church, just looking at it, and I was just crying, just crying, just crying. But even then, God worked my forgiveness, because I forgave her for what she did. I forgave her for how she treated me and the things that she used to do. Wow. But I saw her mom was so broken, and I will never ever, forget that. So even as a kid, being able to have my forgiveness worked, to look back on that and to see, her life and what could have happened, and even with my dad, for the things that he did to her, to make her think literally that she was nothing, no more than somebody just to sell your body, on the street. Wow. So I don't know why God had me to say that, but I guess in that saying that the greatest people in the world, those that overcome what others have done to them. So I just thank God that even from a child that I was learning to forgive. Learning to have that compassion, for someone who did, something to me. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys is if you have ever had to ask forgiveness of someone. And if so, if you don't mind sharing, what was it that you had to ask, and were they receptive? Because sometimes just because we ask doesn't always mean that people are going to be receptive to what we have to say.
Well, I had a situation where I did have to ask for forgiveness. However, I never did. And it's a situation where my grandmother, the woman that raised me, I heard anybody from my grandma in the name of Jesus. But someone,
that's not scriptural.
Sorry, no. But there was someone that was really, really close to her, pretty much using her and manipulating her. And even though she was in the wrong, I felt that it was my duty to stand up for my grandmother and tell this woman off, like, who do you think you are? And I said some really mean, hateful things. And I mean, this is just
if you've ever seen her act, I can imagine what that was like.
Yeah. some really mean and hurtful things. And a couple of years would pass by, I would see her, and I would turn my nose up at her just because, and she didn't even wrong me. But I should have went and said, I'm sorry. Even years after, I saw her and thought about it, okay, I'm praying, I'm thinking, all right, it's over. Next time I see her, I'm gonna ask for forgiveness. Even though she had already told me, I forgive you for what you did. At the time when she said that, I was like, oh, you really got the nerve to come to me and tell me that you forgive me for something that I don't even think I should forgive you. Ask for forgiveness. But I let years and years go by, and I had made it up in my mind that next time I see her, I'm going to ask for forgiveness. Well, the next time I saw her was at her funeral. Wow. And you don't know how much that hurt. Someone that close, family, you should be able to talk to them about anything, especially things that, that hurt you, and you should be able to go to them and say, I'm sorry for what I did, even if, they were just words. Words do break and hurt people. And when I saw her, this older woman, this woman that I had looked up to for years, saw her crying, and I felt no emotion behind what I was saying. And then to see her in that casket and to not be able to say, I'm sorry, and hear her say, I forgive you, to have her know that I honestly was sorry for what I did and said, I never had that opportunity. So now I take that as, any time that I can, I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it with sincerity. Right. I'm going to let them know that I really do mean it. But at this point, I haven't had any situations that I know of. So if anybody that know me listening, I did something to wrong you, please let me know, because I want to rectify that and get that right before either one of us move on and not have that opportunity to get it right.
And that is a hard thing. Yeah. When you have your heart heavy like that and you've gone for such a long time, and enemy will allow that stronghold just to keep you, and you know what you should do, because you wouldn't be feeling that. And that's God. I always have people laughing because I always picture in the cartoons how you have a little angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the little red devil on the other side. And it's like, say it no, say it no, say it no. But I would just encourage, because I've been there, not that I've had someone to pass, but someone to move away, or I didn't have a number, or whatever. And but to me that has to be hard, because that's final. There's no hope that I might find you on Facebook. I might, or we might cross paths somewhere. But for someone to pass and not have that, that's hard. So I would just say, for those of you that are listening, if you're out there and you have someone that that you should apologize to, or someone has asked for forgiveness and you have not forgiven them because you want to hold on to it, let it go. Yeah. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. You want to say something, Angela? Come on, let's share.
I will share. Well, there's so much that I have that kind of held me bound, and just this last year I got freedom over all that stuff. But so much of it held me bound, and the one most significant I'll share, which was the relationship between me and my mother, my birth mother. I felt like, because I will say I was molested as a child. And I just felt like some of the decisions that were made by my parent kind of exposed me to what happened to me, and I had rage for years. I remember there was an incident where my mom was hurt, like really bad. She had to be rushed to the hospital, and it was just like I had no emotion. Wow. I didn't want to help her. I didn't want anybody else to help her. I just don't touch her is where I was. And, it breaks me now to say that, or to even know that I felt that way about her. But I had to share that just out of a message that I was ministering out of bitterness and forgiveness. So that's kind of where I learned all this. And I had to look this stuff in the face. But I shared it with her before I actually ministered it. And it has so healed our relationship. It has so mended all those broken areas. And our relationship is so much better. So I thank God for that. I thank God for having the courage to look at all that stuff. And to even express to her how I felt. Yes, I was angry. I didn't even want anybody to touch you. I wanted you, whatever to happen to you.